Week 14 preview and the NFL playoff odds. We're going to talk about the Lions and Packers and the Seahawks and Cardinals and a few other games. This is the FTN Fantasy Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast for Thursday, December 5th, 2024. I am Aaron Schatz. You know me as that DVOA guy from FTN Fantasy, and he is Mike Tanier. You know his Substack, The Two Deep Zone, at MikeTanier.substack.com. As always, we take your questions live if you are watching, which we do over YouTube and Twitter and other things at 11 a.m. Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays. And as always, we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy sports and the fastest growing app in the industry. They offer a new customer FTN special with up to $1,000 on a first-time deposit. Just use the code FTN for up to $1,000 extra. The NFL season is in full swing, and there is no better place to celebrate than Underdog Fantasy. So sometimes we skip the Thursday night game, but not this week.
Oh, no.
Because this week, the Thursday night game is probably the best game on the docket.
I agree.
So let's talk about the 9-3 Packers visiting the 11-1 Lions. The Lions' chance of winning the division does not get hurt too much by our numbers if they lose this game.
That's stunning.
Partly because we have the Lions so far ahead, and I don't frankly know how much to penalize them for the defensive injuries, because their defense has actually been better since Aiden Hutchinson went down than it was before that. So what I have is that if they lose this game, if the Packers win, we still have the division at 76% Lions, 16% Vikings, and 8% Packers. Remember, they beat the Vikings.
Yes.
And the rematch is in Week 18, is in Detroit.
Right.
However, the Lions' chances of the number one seed go from 85% with a win to 34% with a loss. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you who's rooting for the Packers, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Absolutely. And one thing we're looking at now, remember, we'll talk about the injuries in a minute. This is a tough matchup for the Lions. Next week, the Lions also face the Bills. So if you're looking at that number one seed, if you're looking at it from a wagering perspective, right now you can get the Eagles, I believe, at plus 105. Now,
right. If you think the Eagles are going to win the number one seed, bet it now.
Yes.
Because there's a reasonable chance that the Lions lose the next two games and win the three after that.
Exactly. Whereas at the same time, the Eagles are about to face the Panthers. I think they've got an easy one after that. And then they've got some of their tougher games at the end. So if you feel it's going to work out in the Eagles' favor, you want to do it now and not try to play with the odds later on.
Now, the Lions are number one in DVOA. The Packers are fifth. The Lions won 24-14 in Week 9. Okay. And that game was 24-6 until there were 4 minutes left.
Right.
So that game was a pretty handily won by the Lions. And the Packers, it's interesting, they declared 4 players out, including Jair Alexander and Romeo Doubs, but everybody else is healthy. There's no questionable players.
Right. So the 4 players the Packers declared out are Alexander and Doubs. They've been out a bit. Doubs has missed a game or two. Alexander's been in and out. There's been games he played like 5 snaps. So they're kind of used to playing without them. The other 2 guys are Edgerrin Cooper, who's a pretty useful linebacker, Corey Ballentine, who's a special teamer, essentially. So the Packers' injury report is good. The Lions' injury report is bad, though it could be worse. So what we have here for the Lions is right tackle Taylor Decker out. Defensive lineman Josh Pascal out. Defensive tackle DJ Reader out. That's huge. Defensive lineman Levi Onwuzurike out. You're keeping track of the number of defensive linemen who are out there. There's going to be third stringers playing. And, of course, not listed on the report because he's now on IR, the sugar man, linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez.
And also Alex Anzalone.
And Anzalone is out. Yeah, he's been out for a bit. The good news on that front, cornerbacks Carlton Davis and Emmanuel Mosley are in. They were questionable going into this. So it's not the nightmare. But the spread has moved on this game. The spread has moved down a couple of points based on the sheer volume of these injuries.
I have it at 3.5 right now. Has it moved more since I wrote that down?
No, but it was they opened around 5.5.
The Lions are second in the league in DVOA against short passes. And I think we have to ask, can that possibly continue with the number of linebackers that they have injured? You know, Jordan Love throws more deep than most quarterbacks. Only Anthony Richardson throws deep more often. But obviously, like most quarterbacks, most of the throws are 15 yards or under. So I think that he can take advantage of the Lions' injuries.
Exactly. And you've got that combined with all those injuries on the defensive line. DJ Reader being such an important run defender. What that means for Aaron Jones and those other backs that they have that they've been rotating. Remember Thanksgiving night.
Not Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs. Yeah, Aaron Jones, I'm skipping forward to the
Vikings.
The Vikings, and also backwards in time. You remember the Thanksgiving night game that the Packers were able to run wild on the Dolphins. And there's a risk. It's hard to think about running wild on the Lions, but with so many injuries, they might be able to do that today.
Camden Caps points out that if you like fun run play designs, this is your dream matchup. Yes. I'll point out that the Lions have a lot of long runs. They lead the league in adjusted line yards, but also are very high in open field yards. And the Packers give up a lot of long runs. Although, when these teams played the first time, the longest run was 18 yards by Jahmyr Gibbs. There weren't a lot of like 15, 20, 25 types, but the Lions are definitely could break one of those at any time against this Packers defense.
Okay. I'm going to try to anticipate. I pulled one here. I'm going to try to anticipate something you're going to say. Okay?
Yes.
Packers defense, 30th in DVOA against tight ends?
Yes.
You have that written down?
I wrote that down. I did write that down.
Right. See, I'm on top of you. And, of course, Cooper is one of their coverage linebackers who would possibly get a tight end. Do you have the Laporta props written down?
I do. So the Packers are also third against the deep pass, but 30th against the short pass. So that's Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously.
Yes.
Now, here's the deal. Sam Laporta's over-under is 37.5.
Yes.
Amon-Ra St. Brown's is 71.5.
You
But in the first game, both players went under. Laporta had 28 and St. Brown had 56. Despite the fact that those are weaknesses of the Packers defense.
Okay. Is that going to dissuade you from playing them? You're going Brock Wright?
I think if you want to have fun, I think a Laporta, St. Brown parlay of both of them going over would be fun.
Yes.
A fun call. And then like a Jordan Love going over parlay too would be a fun call for a shootout. Like you would really be rooting for the shootout at that point.
You root for the shootout there. Maybe it's hard to find longest run as opposed to longest reception props, but you can do that. I'm looking at Laporta also, anytime touchdown plus 195. I might play that one based on how this is going.
One thing I'll point out about the first game, Jared Goff only took 1 sack and Jordan Love took no sacks.
That could continue based on what we're seeing.
The Packers are 17th in pressure rate, but only 27th in ESPN's pass rush win rate. And we know the way to get to Jared Goff is you have to pressure him because he's awesome if you don't pressure him.
Right. And it's hard to pressure him when they're running the ball at – I believe the Lions run like 6.1 yards per carry on first down.
The Lions running game is amazing.
Right. They set up 2nd and 4 by default based on their running game because they're averaging about 6 yards per carry. So it's hard to get pressure in those situations.
Another fun split I went and looked up. I went to look for what are the Lions' biggest weaknesses? And if you look at down and play combos, their biggest weakness is runs on third down, where they're 13th. That's the biggest weakness.
And
by the way, that's also the biggest weakness of the Packers offense. Runs on third down, so it's not necessarily something that the Packers can take advantage of.
That's odd, especially because I think of the Lions on 3rd and 6, they're going to run the ball.
This is defense. Sorry, they're defensive.
Defense. Oh, okay.
Runs against them on third downs. Oh, no, nobody runs the ball on 3rd and medium like the Lions.
Right. I love it. I love watching it. 3rd and 4, it's like you'd better mind your run fits in those circumstances. But yeah, that's not much of a exploitable defense.
No, it's not really much of an exploitable weakness. I will point out one more thing I have written down from the Stats Hub, the FTN Stats Hub, with everybody should be subscribing to. The Packers are one of the top zone coverage teams as far as defense.
Okay.
And Goff is superb against man coverage, but not as good against zone. If you think about the strength of St. Brown and Laporta, that makes a lot of sense.
That does make sense. Okay.
So the fact that the Packers play more zone is, and I would think would play even more zone without Jair Alexander, I think is a good strategy against Goff.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you thinking over in this?
I didn't write down what the over-under is.
Grab it for us right quick here.
But I think that the system picks over.
Okay, 51.5 over.
But not by that. I think the system picks under, but not by that much, by like a tiny amount.
Interesting. I might do parlays instead of playing the over. And like you said, look in terms of things like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, rather than trying to go for the score.
Iceman points out that the Buccaneers played a ton of zone back in week 2, and that was when Goff had his worst game.
Well, he had a 5-interception game somewhere in there too.
Right, maybe his worst game other than the interception.
Right, he had a bad game in that one as well. That is interesting.
The line is, again, it's Lions minus 3.5. I think that given the injuries, I would pick the Packers and the spread.
Yes.
I do think the Lions are more likely to win the game, but I think that I would pick it because they're home, they have the home field advantage.
Right.
But I do think I would take the Packers and the spread at 3.5 points because of the injuries.
I would take Packers and the spread because of the injuries. I think that there is an upset potential is pretty high here. And again, it's all the injuries concentrated in a front seven, where you realize it's not just, they're spread all over the field.
It's the cascade of going to the third guy and the fourth guy. And
exactly. And limiting what you can do in terms of your blitz packages because the guys don't know them and stuff like that, where that could be an exploitable weakness. And again, I think the Lions, I still think they're the best team in the NFL, et cetera.
Yes, but they absolutely could be 11-3 in 2 weeks.
Right. This 2-week stretch is going to be a real test for them, yes.
Let's move to the Sunday games. The clear best game at 1 o'clock, although it is not going out to most of the country, is the 6-6 Falcons at the 10-2 Vikings. Why? What were you going to say?
Eagles Panthers. I was just being.
No, I don't. I mean, Bryce Young's been fun the last couple of weeks.
Oh yeah, no, Bryce Young's been fun. It's a trap.
We're getting that here. We're getting Eagles Panthers in Boston. That's what
it's a trap game. It's a trap. It's a trap, Admiral.
I think the trap is the Panthers talking themselves into Bryce Young as their permanent quarterback because of a couple of good games. But that's the trap, I think. But
I think that might be the real trap. Yes.
The Falcons are in the playoffs 75% if they win this game, 46% if they lose.
Okay.
The Vikings mostly need this win for better wild card seeding.
Okay. And I asked you off screen, it's like, well, what about the Lions lose? Doesn't that increase the Vikings' chances of the division? You told me no.
It does increase the Vikings' chances of the division, but not that much. My guess is that if the Vikings win and the Lions lose, then you're talking about the Vikings winning the division like 25 or 30% of the time.
Yeah, you gave me a number, but it was not an impressive.
It was 16%, but that was just if the Lions lose. That was not including the Vikings winning.
Right.
The Vikings are 10th passing, but only 23rd rushing, even with Aaron Jones around. And the Falcons' D is better against the run. So this is one where you want to kind of give it to Sam Darnold and tell him to put him up there.
Absolutely. And Sam Darnold, last 3 weeks, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Kirk Cousins has not thrown a touchdown pass since November 3rd. He has 6 interceptions in his last 3 games. So,
both of these teams give up a lot of yardage to wide receiver 1, and both teams have very good wide receiver 1.
Absolutely.
So you could definitely look for big London and Jefferson games, which I forgot to go look up the props, assuming the props are posted at this point.
Yeah.
I always want to look up props for players on Sunday, and they're never posted by this point. So
no, That's very unusual to get them at this point. That's why we usually focus on the Thursday night ones here. Jefferson has been a little quieter over the last couple of weeks, which will happen with Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, all these other people to throw to. And it also explains Darnold's renaissance within the renaissance to a degree that, like, it is just pitch and catch out there against a lot of the opponents that they're facing in terms of how.
I will point out the inconsistency of defense. I ran that thing in the DVOA commentary this week about weeks 1 through 6 versus 7 to 13 to point out the Eagles defense and how good the Eagles defense has been. The Vikings defense has gone from the best in the league in the first 6 weeks to only 10th in the last 8 weeks.
Right.
7 weeks, last 7 weeks.
Right. They were being carried to a degree by their defense earlier in the season, and now the Vikings are more of a balanced team.
The Falcons are 30th against throws in the middle of the field.
Okay.
Darnold is average on those throws.
Okay.
But that is a weakness of the Falcons' defense.
But the real weakness of the Falcons' defense is they have.
I don't know. Who are the off-ball linebackers for the Falcons?
I don't even want to look. I don't know.
I don't know those names. So.
And of
course, they have very little pass rush.
Yes.
The Vikings are 3rd in ESPN's pass block win rate, and the Falcons are 29th in pass rush win rate.
Yeah. The Falcons got 5 sacks against the Chargers, which was a 50% increase in their total because they had 10 sacks for the entire season before that. I don't think anything changed last week. Abiketti just had a good game, and the Chargers offense is a little odd in that respect.
Bill Houston wants to know, has Tanier morphed into a Sam Darnold apologist? Is he now an average starting quarterback?
He's out there with Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones, a pretty good offensive
and Kevin O'Connell calling the play.
Kevin O'Connell and a defense that guarantees him he's not going to be in this unwinnable, tenable situation. So under these circumstances, he's playing fine. I would not make any long-term commitment to him. But even before that, I never thought he was anything but like if you need him out there for a couple of games, he'll get you through a couple of games guy. That's what he was often in Carolina, except the team around him was horrendous.
The pick is no pick. Sorry. The line is Vikings -5.5. And the pick formula thinks that line is basically perfect.
Well, it's a Falcons game, so I have nothing to say about it.
Our opinion is don't ever bet on Falcons games either way.
Right.
If I had to, I think I would go with the Falcons.
Well,
but
yeah, watching
that making faces while I say that.
Watching that game last week, that 4 interception meltdown kind of broke me. Like I didn't think it would be broken by the Falcons anymore, and that broke me even further. If it's a 5.5 point spread, I think the Vikings will wind up winning by 5.
I mean, I think there's been talk about should they bring in Penix? Should they try to trade Cousins in the offseason? I can't imagine anyone's going to want that Cousins contract in the offseason.
I got that in a radio show. It's like, oh yeah, like trade Cousins. It's like, yeah, who says who wants him? Where's he going? Right. There's a lot of money in place there, and bringing Penix in now is basically saying everything we did this year was wrong. Like from an institutional standpoint, you can't say, well, we're going to give up now. Even though you're still leading your division, you can still make the playoffs. That's not realistic. That's just sort of like knee-jerk reaction there. Anyway, I'm calling it 26-21, Vikings win.
Useful Title wants to know if there's an over-under on Kyle Pitts being traded in the offseason. I don't think that would be an over-under, but that, what are the odds of Kyle Pitts being traded? What does he have, one more year?
They never extended him. Let me look real quick because I'm now curious. First of all, he had a couple of decent games and then disappeared again. I don't know if he had a catch last week. Let's see.
I feel like Kyle Pitts' problem is much more one of expectations than actual performance.
I think there's a lot to that.
He was just drafted too high.
Okay. He will be going into his rookie final season, his $10 million final season there. So I don't know who's going to trade and take that 1 year. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get $11 million to get 1 year of him. Maybe you can create some kind of sign and trade deal. You could get it. But yeah, you're right, Aaron. It was expectations, and also he can't block. he can't block. He's not a good blocker. And we poo-poo this. And we say, well, you know what? It doesn't matter because no tight ends block, etc. He's exceptionally bad. So he's just a very big slot receiver, and that limits what you can do with him.
One more 1 p.m. question we got from Hitchhiker's Pie. How long do you need to see Bryce Young continue the upward trend to change your priors on him as the long-term answer? How long did it take for you to change your priors on Josh Allen, he asks. I would say if Bryce Young can be above average for the next 5 weeks, that I will change my prior. That would be a long enough stretch that I would say, okay, that's the last 7 or 8 games of his second season. All right, let's see what he can do next year. Yeah. But I don't think he's going to be above average for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of pretending that like Josh Allen and Bryce Young are the same in terms of how much leeway
their physical bodies are very different. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, they're right, and like the physical traits suggest. I feel comfortable saying you give Allen a longer leash, just like you give Anthony Richardson a longer leash in terms of saying, look, if this pulls itself together, like if Bryce Young pulls itself together, then we've got this little guy who can kind of play. Right now, over his like winning streak, or what? Not winning streak, the last 4 games where he's 2-2, his completion rate's only 59%. Like we've seen a lot of like positive plays, been able to move the ball better. It's not like he's been out there ripping it. It's like he's been playing average to above average. Now again, the supporting cast, at least in terms of receivers, isn't great. For the next 5 games, let's evaluate and say, I'll push past. Like they don't need to draft a quarterback. Like if he really does continue this, give him another year.
Yeah,
I'd feel comfortable with that. But for me to say, I was wrong about this guy, let's wait. We've seen quarterbacks have blips before.
The biggest game at 4 p.m. Is the Seahawks at 7-5 at the Cardinals at 6-6. This is huge. The Cardinals with a 71% make playoffs with a win, only 17% with a loss. The Seahawks 62% with a win and only 11% with a loss. The Seahawks do not have good tiebreakers,
including the fact that the Seahawks do have the win over the Cardinals, which means
right. So if the Cardinals even this up, the Seahawks totally lose on tiebreakers. If the Cardinals lose this, then the Cardinals totally lose on tiebreakers. So this is a really important game. The game that may force me out of my house.
Oh, why's that?
Because it's not. It's a 4:05 game, not a 4:25 national game. Okay. So it's on the non-doubleheader. CBS is the non-doubleheader network this week.
Oh, okay.
So unfortunately, my favorite sports bar in Worcester closed. So I'm trying to figure out where to go.
I wouldn't know what to do with myself if my sports bar closed.
Yeah.
I might have to retire.
Normally I watch at home. So the Cardinals are much better by DVOA, right? The Cardinals are, even though they have the lower record, they're 7th by DVOA. The Seahawks are 18th. They're basically the same on defense, with the Seahawks defense playing much better in recent weeks.
Yes.
But the Cardinals are much better on offense. And in particular, the Seahawks running game has been the worst in the league over the last 7 weeks. Now, the Seahawks won 16-6 only 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
But the main difference was a pick 6 by Kobe Bryant. So it was not like a huge Seahawks victory as far as like the difference in the play-by-play.
A big pick 6 by Kobe Bryant. A couple of settle for field goal situations by the Cardinals, which has become a problem for them because they settled for, I think, 15 field goals against the Vikings. And it was a little bit of a surprise in that respect. But, yeah, Seahawks running game, weak, even though they have the backs. They should be, decent. Also, 31st in goal line DVOA.
Yes.
Which we saw with the...
Hasn't that been a problem for Seahawks for years now?
It has to have been. And, like, I was sitting at the bar... because we were watching them against the Jets. It's like, worst goal line defense. Something crazy is going to happen. Something crazy. And they ran like 10 plays from the 1 yard line. And then 4th down, Gino took a 15-yard sack. It was hilarious.
Here's an interesting, the Cardinals are only 27th against other wide receivers because they don't have great depth. Okay. Garrett Williams is playing really well at cornerback, but they don't have great depth. Mm-hmm. And the Seahawks, of course, go 3 deep at wide receiver. But then I looked up the game from 2 weeks ago, and Tyler Lockett had only 20 yards.
Wow. Interesting.
So
Well, Lockett hasn't. Yeah, he's
Lockett. This feels like he's nearing the end this year.
Yes, and Jackson Smith and Jigba has taken over a lot of that. I've seen Bobo on the field a lot, although they don't target him much. Quick injury report update. Lockett was on the injury report, but I think it was a rest day. Mostly veteran rest days there. Leo Williams was on it, but I think that was just rest. Punter Michael Dixon has back spasms. He was limited against the Jets. And the Seahawks say they may sign a punter. DK has a shoulder injury. He was a limited participant, but that's worth mentioning. He was banged up and in and out of the game against the Jets. Oh, and by the way, Seahawks kickoff returner Laviska Shenault was waived. I can't imagine why. D. Williams will be taking over as their kick returner.
I really like the Cardinals in this game. The line is 2.5.
Yeah.
I'm going with DVOA. The underlying performance for the Cardinals has just been much better than the Seahawks.
Yeah, and from a watch the game perspective, when you watch them, the Cardinals look like they are pretty balanced. They look like a wild card caliber team. The Seahawks keep getting these wins that are like, how did you get that win? Last Sunday's win was a how did you get that win kind of win. And I'm going all the way for this. I'm going to the wall for the Cardinals on this one.
The 4:00 game that most of the country is getting is the 10-2 Bills at the 6-6 Rams. Bills get the number one seed 70% of the time if they win, but only 38% of the time if they lose. The Rams make the playoffs 33% of the time with a win and 15% of the time with a loss. Bills are third in DVOA. Rams are 16th.
I would love the Bills to win, Cardinals to win. I don't have to think about the NFC West until the playoffs. I would really love that. I'm kind of tired of grinding through those four teams. I know we can take the 49ers off finally. But, this division just it needs to right itself. And then this is the weekend it could probably happen.
The Rams are much better against passes up the middle than on the sides, but Allen is excellent up the middle. They're also much better on short passes, which makes you wonder, can they control Khalil Shakir, who has, I believe, the lowest average depth of target of any starting wide receiver, but is like a yak machine.
Right. They love throwing the quick screen them, excuse me. By the way, good news on the injury report for the Bills as if they need more good news. Matt Milano was back last week.
Yes.
Coleman and Dalton Kincaid were limited in practice this week and could be back. Monitor that because it sounded like a pretty sanguine injury report. But if they get those guys back, just more opportunities both for short passes and passes in general.
There's a couple of great strength versus strength lineups in matchups in this game. First of all, that young defensive line of the Rams, especially Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, against a very good offensive line that's sixth in pass block win rate.
That is a good matchup.
And they're not, Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas covering Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua.
Yeah, they're all very good matchups. It's just, I don't know how you stack it to get the Rams into the same territory here. Stafford, by the way, is playing on a sprained ankle.
Yeah.
I mean, there was another injury here, but let me see. Tyler Higbee possibly out for the Rams. It's minor, but they don't have a lot of tertiary targets after Puka and Cooper. And let's not forget, Kobe Turner was on The Masked Singer.
He was? I did not know that.
Yes. This is a difference maker for the game. Adjust your lines accordingly. I found this out. Thank you guys on DVI Discord. I have no idea what goes on The Masked Singer, but
no, neither do I.
Right, but Kobe guest appearance.
Good for him. Bills minus 4.5. It is in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
but I'll tell you what I really like on this is the over, because give me Josh Allen indoors. Woo!
Indoors in good weather. What's the over right now? 49.5. I can feel that. But I feel the Bills. I don't need, 3.5 points is not going to do it for me for the Rams.
Yeah, it's 4.5. I have it 4.5.
I have it 3.5.
Has it moved?
I have 3.5. So.
Oh, then I'm really on the Bills. At 3.5, I would definitely be on the Bills.
Right. That does make a big difference, that 1 point, because you get the 24-20 and all that.
Let's finish it up with the 8 p.m. game. The 8-4 Chargers at the 11-1 Chiefs. The Chiefs get the number 1 seed 48% of the time if they win, but only 19% if they lose. The Chargers need a win for a 25% chance at the division. They are basically in the playoffs at this point. Bill Houston wants to know, with the DJ Humphries signing and Amenahu, Pacheco, and Hollywood Brown returning, do you think the Chiefs are flipping the switch? Now, here is the thing. That defense has been the 29th best in the league over the last few weeks. And it can't all just be that Jalen Watson got hurt.
Right.
And I don't know if Hollywood Brown can be in sync with Mahomes mentally with 2 weeks of practice.
Right.
The more we go on, the more the Chiefs feel less like the 1990 49ers who lost because Montana got hurt, and more like the 2005 Patriots, which was early in my career, where everyone said it didn't matter that the Patriots were not as good in 2005 because once we got to the playoffs,
right,
Belichick and Brady would flip the switch,
right,
and they would be unstoppable. They had won 3 out of 4 titles, and everyone said, once they get to the playoffs, they will flip the switch. They got to the playoffs, and they lost to Denver.
And their receiving core was really – they needed to reload on the receiving core. That was later on, the year later, they got Randy Moss. That was when they had, like, Reke.
It was 2 years before they got Randy Moss,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So it was their first great team they needed to refresh at that point. I kind of feel that way about the Chiefs a little bit. By the way, DJ Humphries, it sounds like he will be getting the start at left tackle. Those of you who aren't, like, totally down with this, Humphries was a very steady starter for the years for the Cardinals at left tackle. He tore an ACL last December, and it was on the men from the Chiefs who are desperate at left tackle because Wanya Morris was a mess and the rookie's a mess, have brought him in. I don't know how big an impact he could be. He should prevent the emergencies that we've been seeing.
It's remarkable that because of the Raiders game,
yes,
the Chiefs are now behind the Chargers and Broncos in DVOA.
That's stunning.
Because of the Raiders game. The Chiefs did win against the Chargers 17-10 back in week 4. The Chargers is interesting. They are 5th against the pass, but 15th against the run. It is actually more efficient to run against the Chargers than to pass against the Chargers. So perhaps Pacheco and Hunt will have big games here.
Right. Speaking of things I've been thinking since 2005, maybe Andy Reid will run the ball.
I mean, that would seem to be the right strategy against the Chargers defense. It is rare to have a defense where it is more efficient to run than pass, unless it's a really, really good defense. Like, it's rare.
Right.
So the Chargers are, here's an interesting mix, 2nd in DVOA against wide receiver 1, but 30th against wide receiver 2.
I did see that, but then I was trying to figure out who's who.
Why would that be the case? I don't know whether that would be related to a specific cornerback or whether that's related to something that Jesse Minter likes to do with the coverage, the way the Patriots used to double the 1. But I wonder whether Xavier Worthy is up to the task. Will they double Hopkins and let Xavier Worthy, beat them? Right.
And the Chargers have been without their top cornerback for weeks and weeks and weeks. He got hurt weeks ago. So it's been a rotation of guys out there. So I can't think it's just
this kid Still. Tarheeb Still, the rookie for the Chargers, is playing very well.
Yeah, he had 2 picks against Cousins and has been playing well before that. It wasn't just a Kirk thing. He's been playing well. But I'm trying to think the second generation guy, not Asante Samuel.
I don't remember. I don't remember who their other second generation cornerback is.
Give me one moment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, dear listeners.
Hitchhiker's Pie points out that Pro Football Reference's simple rating system also puts the Broncos and Chargers ahead of the Chiefs. And Super High Me Channel says the Chargers rammed ball control in the first game, and then they shut the Chiefs out in the first half, and I don't think they can replicate this game plan without J.K. Dobbins.
It's possible. One thing that's weird about the Chargers, by the way, it was Asante Samuel I was thinking about.
Oh.
I was trying to make sense of their offense, and it seemed like something was missing, and then I realized they just don't run a lot of plays. The Chargers have only run 702 plays this year. only the Panthers and Jaguars have run fewer plays. The Panthers and Jaguars are teams that are punting constantly and giving the ball back and trailing late in the game where the other team is controlling the clock. The Chargers are the opposite of that. They should be controlling the clock late in the games. This is clearly a pace thing where they are very, methodically and meticulously saying,
which makes sense if you think of Jim Harbaugh offense.
It's Harbaugh, it's that Big Ten philosophy. It's Roman. That's what we're doing here. But then, what was I going to say here? Also, the Chargers have gone 3 and out 30% of the time. So when it's not working, it isn't working, and they are giving the ball back a lot. One thing, by the way, I had on the injury report on this, Ladd McConkey is dealing with both ankle and shoulder sprains. He was a limited participant. Jim Harbaugh was saying, maybe he'll get out there. Maybe he'll get out there. I think Harbaugh was being a little wishful thinking. McConkey is the leading receiver right now for the Chargers, and he would be a loss if he's unavailable.
Chiefs -4. It is really hard to imagine taking the Chiefs and giving 4 points at this point. Doesn't it feel like the Chiefs will win this by 2?
Exactly what I'm thinking.
Again?
Yes. This is a backdoor cover for the 8, or not backdoor cover, it's them winning on the game-winning field goal type of game.
And the McConkey injury is huge. We'll, see whether McConkey plays or not, but I feel like Chargers +4.
Chargers +4. Yeah, and you're right. Monitor that one because a lot of their offense was McConkey over the middle over the last few weeks. But I'm still feeling it. Don't lay any points with the Chiefs if you can avoid it until you see a switch get flipped.
Right. All right, that does it for the December 5th Thursday show. Thank you to everybody who has been listening. Thank you to everybody watching live, everybody who's made comments and asked questions. We totally appreciate it. Again, we're here every Monday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern for the live show, and then on your favorite podcast app. Afterwards, look for the FTN Fantasy Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast. Make sure you read Mike's Substack. Make sure you read the DVOA page. We've got a big article today asking whether Saquon Barkley is even the MVP of the Eagles.
Oh, no!
Let alone the whole league. It's some A.J. Brown love, kids, and Jalen Hurts love, too. But it's an interesting article. You should check that out if you're a subscriber at FTN Fantasy. All right. For Mike Tanier, I am Aaron Schatz, and we will see you next Monday. So long, everybody.